On March the 13th of 2018, officers Kyle Erickson and Elmer Pastran of the NYPD's 120th Precinct initiated a traffic stop on an SUV with a broken tail light. Among the vehicle's occupants was 30-year-old Jason Serrano, a Staten Island resident who at the time was recovering from surgery relating to a stab wound. The traffic stop culminated in Serrano's arrest, as officers Erickson and Pastran allegedly found marijuana inside the SUV. Serrano consequently faced charges of drug possession, obstructing governmental administration, and resisting arrest. He later pleaded guilty to the latter charge in order to avoid jail time. However, in November of 2021, Staten Island Criminal Court Judge Tomiko Ameka vacated the man's guilty plea following the emergence of damning body cam footage from the traffic stop 3.5 years earlier. A probe by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York led to the discovery of the video, which captured Erickson telling his partner, "We gotta find something," shortly before searching the vehicle. Erickson was subsequently shown placing a chunk of weed in the SUV's cup holder, which they used as justification for Serrano's ensuing arrest. The incident marked the second time in a matter of weeks that Erickson and Pastran had allegedly planted drugs in an innocent person's vehicle during a traffic stop. LaSalle Cuyete spent 2 weeks behind bars after getting arrested by the corrupt cops, but was likewise exonerated after body cam footage of the traffic stop came to light. Erickson left the force in 2021 in the midst of a civilian complaint review board case against him for an alleged retaliatory arrest. Meanwhile, Pastran was still listed as a community policing officer in Staten Island's 120th Precinct on the NYPD's website as of the latest updates. Number 6. Jasmine Burlingame. At about 7:30 a.m. on Valentine's Day 2015, a Denver police officer went to St. Anthony's Hospital to investigate a report of an assault. A young woman by the name of Jasmine Burlingame told the officer that she'd been abused the night before. According to Burlingame's account, she'd accompanied a male co-worker to his home, where upon arrival they encountered his roommate playing video games. They subsequently went into the co-worker's bedroom to talk, but the roommate allegedly barged in and knocked the man unconscious. He then shifted his attention towards Burlingame, whom he was accused of pinning to the bed and viciously assaulting. Following the alleged altercation, Burlingame fled from the house and managed to get in contact with her cousin, who then drove her to the hospital. Law enforcement immediately detected inconsistencies with the young woman's testimony. The co-worker had no recollection of the events Burlingame described and didn't present with any injuries indicative of having been knocked unconscious. The roommate likewise denied the accusations against him and willingly provided a DNA sample to clear his name. Furthermore, physical evidence recovered from the crime scene reportedly contradicted the version of events provided by Burlingame during subsequent interviews with the police. The young woman stuck to her original story. However, when it was determined that she'd made the whole thing up, Burlingame was charged with attempting to influence a public official and false reporting to authorities. She was released on a $5,000 personal recognizance bond. Number 5. Reynaldo Guevara. Former Chicago detective Reynaldo Guevara worked on the city's northwest side in the 1970s and 80s, during which he helped secure dozens of murder convictions. By the year 2023, Guevara was in his 70s and living in Texas, having retired from the force. He was also facing a litany of federal and civil lawsuits in connection with his law enforcement career. Per court records, Guevara was accused of framing multiple people for murders they didn't commit, in part by forcing confessions, intimidating witnesses, and manipulating lineups. In the years following the height of his police activity, more than 30 murder convictions that happened under his watch have been thrown out. In March of 2023, 11 exonerated convicts banded together to file a new lawsuit against Guevara for allegedly framing them. One of the litigants involved was Johnny Flores, who had his murder conviction vacated the previous year. When asked what the goal for the lawsuit was, Flores stated that this never happens again, that the system is corrected to where it is more transparent, and no other citizen has to go through this. As of the most recent updates on the matter, Guevara hadn't been charged with any crime, having consistently pleaded the Fifth Amendment whenever questioned about the allegations. Number 4. The framing of Yasmin Kosar. On April the 1st of 2022, the charred remains of 65-year-old Mohammed Farouk were found inside a car at a garbage dump in Rawalpindi in the Punjab region of Pakistan. In the aftermath, the man's wife, Yorkshire woman Jasmine Kosar, was detained by Pakistani law enforcement on suspicion of having her husband killed by a 23-year-old man who worked for his family. 62-year-old Kosar, a resident of Leeds, publicly professed her innocence following her early morning arrest on April the 4th, claiming she'd been framed. Her application for bail was initially refused by the Sessions Court in Rawalpindi. However, a judge ultimately granted her bail after the matter was taken to the High Court in Lahore. While explaining his decision, the Honourable Mr. Justice Muhammad Tariq Nadeem stated, "I have observed that no direct evidence is available against the petitioner which can connect her with the commission of crime." He went on to detail how Kosar had been arrested on the basis of a statement provided by the victim's son, Mujahid. It's been theorized that the false accusations levied against Kosar were part of a ploy by her husband's family to prevent her from receiving his inheritance. Number 3. Asme. In 2018, a man from Sydney, Australia, called for the deportation of his wife after she falsely accused him of assault. The man, identified only as Faisal, reportedly encountered his eventual spouse, a Moroccan national named Asme, on the Muslim dating site Muslima.com. Faisal later estimated that he spent upwards of $200,000 on his new bride, lavishing her with Gucci tracksuits, leather jackets, jewelry, shoes, holidays, fine dining, and even sent money back to her family in Morocco. After just 8 months of marriage, Faisal began to suspect that his wife didn't actually love him, but had taken advantage of his desire for a life partner to get into the country legally. They argued constantly, and ultimately, Faisal grew tired of the situation. He reached out to a lawyer and a visa expert in search of advice. However, Asme stumbled upon their email correspondence and subsequently took retaliatory action. As reported by the Australian news program A Current Affair, Asme trashed her husband's apartment while he was at work after discovering his doubts about her. When he arrived home that night, she stormed out. After hours had passed and Asme still hadn't returned home, Faisal went to the police station to report her missing, but was instead arrested on suspicion of domestic violence. He was held in custody overnight, while police officers accompanied Asme to the apartment to collect her things. Faisal later claimed that law enforcement unknowingly helped his wife steal some of his belongings, including designer sunglasses, expensive watches, and a laptop. Facing up to 7 years in jail for allegedly assaulting Asme, Faisal spent $20,000 on a lawyer to help prove his innocence. He finally did just that after examining hours upon hours of CCTV footage. After storming out of the apartment that fateful night, Asme had entered the elevator where she delivered a pair of blows to her own face in order to legitimize her false accusations against her husband. Once the truth surfaced, Asme fled Sydney. Faisal called upon the Australian government to track her down and deport her back to Morocco. Number 2. Reuben Venzor. Texas man Reuben Venzor filed a complaint with the Internal Affairs Division of the El Paso Police Department on July the 5th of 2022. 29-year-old Venzor claimed that during a traffic stop that occurred in February, he had been placed in handcuffs and slammed against the hood of a police vehicle by officers. Internal investigators were told that an El Paso officer had grabbed the man by the shoulder and elbow and forcefully pushed his head into the hood. However, a review of the video footage of the traffic stop made it clear that Venzor's allegations against the officers involved were completely unfounded. The clip showed the man bend forward and strike his own forehead against the police car without any added force. He ultimately admitted to falsifying the accusations and was arrested on charges of making a false report to a peace officer. We have our video from a while back about lawyers who went wrong lined up for you after number 1. Stay put if you'd like. Number 1. Catherine Elizabeth Bennett. 21-year-old Catherine Elizabeth Bennett from Fort Collins, Colorado, claimed to have been lured to a Safeway parking lot in Windsor by a male acquaintance whom she accused of kidnapping and assaulting her on November the 24th of 2013. The accused, identified as 25-year-old Daniel Toth, insisted that their encounter had been consensual. However, Bennett was steadfast in her claims that Toth accosted her at knife point, drugged her, and took her back to his nearby home to abuse her. After the young woman brought her allegations to the police, Toth, a Windsor National Guardsman, was arrested on serious felony charges. He consequently lost his job at Otterbox and was prohibited from deploying to Cuba with his Army National Guard team. As the investigation progressed, however, law enforcement officials began to suspect Bennett of being untruthful in her original testimony. She made several changes to her story and made claims that were found to be verifiably false. She also reportedly deleted text messages that contradicted her initial police reports. On December the 10th, a warrant was issued for Bennett's arrest on suspicion of fabricating an elaborate kidnapping hoax against Toth. The case against the latter was dropped, but he experienced lasting effects from the ordeal both personally and professionally. Toth reportedly struggled to find work and had multiple apartment applications rejected. He also started enduring anxiety attacks as a consequence of his experience. In August of 2014, a jury found Bennett guilty of lying to police and 2 counts of tampering with physical evidence. The young woman's parents pleaded with the judge for leniency, expressing a desire for their daughter to continue seeing a psychiatrist for treatment of several mental health conditions including depression, OCD, and PTSD. They highlighted Bennett's lack of criminal history as well as her mental struggles as reason enough for the judge to impose a light punishment. In October of 2014, a Weld County judge sentenced her to 32 days in jail, 180 days of electronic home monitoring, and 5 years of supervised probation. Number 9. Marco Bisbikis. Marco Bisbikis, a 38-year-old attorney from Southfield, Michigan, was arrested for hiring a hitman to murder jeweler Dan Hutchinson on June the 1st of 2022. Bisbikis worked at a law firm specializing in personal injuries. Hutchinson, who was accompanied by his wife on the day of the attack, was fatally shot in his car after exiting his pawn shop. His wife wasn't harmed by the hitman, who immediately fled the scene following the shooting. After the police launched an investigation into the matter, they discovered that Bisbikis had been hired to draft Hutchinson's will, but had unlawfully edited the document to include himself as one of the beneficiaries. 3 other men were arrested in relation to the attack, including the alleged shooter, 44-year-old Roy Larry. Investigators also discovered call records connecting Larry and Bisbikis with one another. The co-conspirators were reportedly in contact minutes before the crime was committed. Bisbikis was charged with premeditated murder, felony firearm possession, and conspiracy. Number 8. Gavin Rush. On November the 26th of 2022, 41-year-old Gavin Rush was caught on camera shooting his ex-girlfriend 3 times at a bar in Austin, Texas. Rush, who worked as an attorney at the Pfeiffer, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway law firm, had a history of violence, having been charged with assault in 2017 for attacking a previous partner. CCTV footage showed the man entering the bar where his former girlfriend worked and pulling out a gun, at which point he opened fire at the woman before he was tackled to the ground by 3 patrons. Witnesses later testified that Rush had grown irate after the woman, whose identity wasn't disclosed, refused to speak to him. Fortunately, she wasn't harmed during the attack. Rush was arrested for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and released 2 days later on a $40,000 bond. In a shocking turn of events, Rush was found dead at his residence on November the 30th. As of the most recent available updates, his cause of death hadn't been revealed to the public, with the investigation still ongoing. Authorities did, however, indicate that they did not consider the lawyer's death to be suspicious. Number 7. Haley Christine Sherman. 29-year-old attorney Haley Christine Sherman and her boyfriend, 33-year-old James Brandon Farmer, were arrested on April the 5th of 2018 after police discovered a large quantity of illicit drugs at their residence in Stokes County, North Carolina. After conducting a 2-month investigation into the couple's illegal activities, police obtained a warrant to search their home, uncovering the material, which included unprescribed Xanax, as well as digital scales and packaging material. They were arrested on 14 felony charges related to possession with the intent to sell and deliver illicit substances. On October the 22nd of 2018, Sherman agreed to a plea agreement with the prosecution and was consequently sentenced to 30 months of supervised probation. She was also disbarred after facing North Carolina's Disciplinary Hearing Commission on April the 26th of 2021. Number 6. Brianna Christine Ionites. A criminal attorney from Gold Coast, Australia named Brianna Christine Ionites was arrested 3 times between November of 2015 and February of 2016 on charges related to possession and distribution of illicit substances. The 26-year-old lawyer, who reportedly held connections to the Finks biker gang, failed to appear in court for a hearing on the first 2 cases, leading police to search her home, where they seized money, weapons, steroids, and several illegal drugs. On February the 18th of 2016, Ionites was arrested along with several other suspects during a bikini party at a luxury apartment owned by Mass Nutrition founder Luke McNally. Police found MDMA and GHB as well as other substances, and also uncovered evidence of a lab. Ionites had a long history of run-ins with the law, breaking parole, and was the focus of several police investigations. She pleaded guilty to 21 charges on April the 16th of 2019 and was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. Number 5. Michael Avenatti. California lawyer Michael Avenatti, who represented adult film actress Stormy Daniels during her legal battle against former President Donald Trump, was sentenced to 14 years in prison on December the 6th of 2022 for defrauding his clients. 51-year-old Avenatti, who was already serving a 5-year sentence for 2 unrelated convictions, pleaded guilty to charges of wire fraud and obstruction. In addition to the prison time, he was also ordered to pay $10.8 million in restitution to his victims. Avenatti chose to represent himself during the trial, in spite of not being a criminal lawyer. His prior convictions were related to an attempt to extort nearly $25 million from Nike and cheating his former client, Daniels, out of a portion of her book proceeds. The sentences would not be served concurrently, adding up to a total of 19 years behind bars for the disgraced attorney. Number 4. Andrew Spark. Andrew Spark, a Florida lawyer, was arrested on December the 17th of 2017 for exposing himself while visiting clients at the Pinellas County Jail and requesting intimate favors from female inmates. Taking advantage of his position as a defense attorney to spend time in private with prisoners, Spark, aged 58, paid women to have intercourse with him. He allegedly recorded the encounters on his iPad for an adult film series entitled Girls in Jail. Authorities were able to gather evidence against the lawyer during an undercover operation in November of 2017 involving convicted felon Shanna Boselli. Spark offered to deposit a small sum of money into Boselli's commissary account in exchange for intimate relations. Another inmate, Antoinette Rose Napolitano, also collaborated with the investigation. Police wired the room before her meeting with Spark and successfully caught him in the act. He was charged with soliciting, exposure, and possession of contraband, for which he was sentenced to 5 years probation on February the 8th of 2019. Number 3. Keegan Kelly Harros. Oklahoma defense lawyer Keegan Kelly Harros faced the possibility of the death penalty for helping her client, 40-year-old Barry Rowland Titus II, murder his ex-girlfriend and her parents on September the 7th of 2019. Harros, who was 38 at the time, fell in love with Titus while representing him in a domestic assault case against his former partner, 43-year-old Tiffany Icor. The pair got married soon after, and Harros allegedly advised her new husband to frame his ex by planting evidence, which landed her in trouble for witness intimidation. Together, Harros and Titus plotted to murder Icor and her parents, Jack and Kay Chandler, 65 and 69, respectively. All 3 victims were shot multiple times with 2 different caliber guns. On the night of the attack, Titus and Harros were recorded by a surveillance camera parking close to Icor's home. Several DNA samples obtained at the scene were positively matched to Titus, who was the police's main suspect given his violent history with the victims. Another vital piece of inculpatory evidence was provided by Harrow's brother, who gave the police an AR-15 he believed to have been used to commit the triple homicide. Investigators were able to match the shell cases found at the scene to the rifle and find the weapon's original owner, who confirmed he'd sold it to Harrow's and Titus. Both suspects were charged with premeditated murder and burglary. While awaiting trial, Harrow's was sentenced to 2 years in prison for possession of a rifle in violation of federal law because she was subject to an emergency victim protective order. As of the latest developments, the legal proceedings were still ongoing. Number 2. Vicky Greco. Between 2008 and 2010, attorney Vicky Greco submitted fake documents to the Las Vegas Justice Court in over 41 cases in which she was involved. Greco would allegedly falsify certificates of completion for both court-appointed counseling and community service for her clients, most of whom were escorts. An investigation was launched after inconsistencies were discovered in the paperwork she filed on behalf of her clients, leading to her arrest in December of 2015. She was charged with 138 felony and gross misdemeanor counts, including burglary, forgery, and destroying evidence. The following year, her law license was suspended by the Nevada Supreme Court. On May the 30th of 2018, Greco pleaded guilty to 3 of the felonies, admitting to defrauding the court system. She was sentenced to 90 days in jail plus 5 years probation. If Greco failed to comply with the conditions of her probation, she could face between 19 and 48 months of additional jail time. Number 1. Jennifer Emmy. 43-year-old Jennifer Emmy, a prominent animal rights lawyer from Evergreen, Colorado, attempted to hire a hitman to murder her estranged husband's new girlfriend, Karen Elledge, in January of 2020. Emmy, who owned a non-profit organization known as Animal Law Center, was involved in bitter divorce proceedings with the father of her 3 children, Donnie, at the time of her arrest. Elledge, aged 30, had been employed by the couple as an au pair before their separation, after which she became romantically involved with Donnie. Emmy asked 28-year-old Timothy Lindsay, one of the ranch hands employed by her NPO, to help her find a hitman. Instead, he contacted both Emmy's husband and the police on November the 2nd of 2020 and told authorities he'd pretended to be interested in his boss's offer and told her it would cost her around $100,000. Lindsay, who managed to record one of his conversations with Emmy, stated that she'd briefly considered the idea of also murdering her husband and framing the double homicide as a car accident. On June the 28th of 2021, Emmy pleaded guilty to 9 felonies in connection to 3 separate cases, including one in which she'd threatened her husband with a knife. She was ultimately sentenced to 10 years behind bars, with credit for the 7 months she'd already served during the case's legal proceedings. Thanks for watching. Would you rather find out that a co-worker has been lying to your boss about your supposedly poor performance, or that they've been taking credit for all your accomplishments? Let us know in the comments section below.